This thing looks pimp. All right guys, welcome back to the channel. So I promised you for a while that I was going to show you how to make your own custom sight tapes. For me, this is what I'm doing this year. It's not something I've done in past year, and there's nothing wrong with the sight tapes that these these sight manufacturers supply to you. For the longest time, this is what I ran. These are some examples from HHA, and they got quite the array. It's all based off of your arrow speed, and I've had no problems with them, except they don't go far enough. So the farthest that these sight tapes will go out on these HHA ones specifically is 100 yards. Now, I'm not gonna be hunting past 100 yards, but I like to frequently shoot to and out past 100 yards, and I just can't do that. Sure, I can go in and make my own pencil marks, which is what I've done in the past, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I just don't want to do that. I want a full yard by yard sight tape to be able to use on my bow. Honestly, I think you can pretty much use whatever sight tapes you want and stick them onto whatever sight you want. They're not necessarily brand specific. They might fit, they might not. It's all based on, you know, trajectory and calculation of your arrow and science. I'm gonna log in here to, this is Archer's Advantage. This is a $12 subscription you pay for every year. It is $12. This app or this program is actually really cool. You can do a lot of things in it. So for example, you can select a lot of different setups or make your own hypothetical setups. You can go, like I have my V3X33, my target bow that's shooting PS27s. These are my tack arrows. And right here we have an example, which is pretty much the same as this tack arrow setup. So you can do a lot of really cool stuff in here. You can change through all these different arrows, all these different manufacturers, select what you want, select the different shafts that they have. All this information automatically inputs into the system. They have all of this in a data log set. To make your own sight tapes, the first thing you need to do is you need to sight in your bow. And if you watch the other video I had, and I'll link the video up here on how to maximize your sight tape, this is how to get the most out of that sight tape that you can possibly get. All right, so once you are sighted in, you can do one of two things. You can either pull the setup tape off of this wheel and lay it out flat, or you can take the supplied one that HHA or some of these other manufacturers will supply to you. They are just more setup. They're all the same. So for what I do is, because I know I'm trying to build a sight tape from 50 out past 100, and I know my last two marks that I'm going to build this scale off of are 50 and 100. So I'm going to measure from 0, which was my 50, out to 65. All right, lock it down. This comes out to be 2.022 inches. You can do this, like I said, on a tape measure and try to get as close as you can. All right, now that I have, let's go back. Let's restart the screen recording. Now that I have my measurement, I know exactly what I need to input. I'm gonna go back into the program here. I'm gonna go to Setup. This is mostly just my arrow stuff, so let's actually go to Sight In. All right, so to sight in, we knew our range 1, which was our 0 mark, was 50 yards. So range 1, we're gonna put in 50. The mark is gonna be 0. Range 2 was 100. And the mark, this is your measurement that you have taken, which was 2.022 inches. You're gonna input it into mark number 2. Calculate speed. This comes out to be 194.4, but that is not the speed of the arrow out of the bow. That is the speed of the arrow between range 50 and 100. So that's kind of irrelevant, and it kind of throws a lot of this shaft selector stuff off. Once you are set, you can go to Print, Sight Tapes, and this is what it'll look like. This is what your new sight tapes are going to look like. They give you 6 of them across the board here, and 2 of them are at the speed that you have put in, and 2 feet per second slower, 1 feet per second slower, 1 faster, 2 faster. So it gives you options if the first one you print out does not come out to be exact. You can change up the different, how this looks on these sight tapes by going back into here to Customize, and you can change how far you want your sight tape to go out. You can have it go all the way out to 200. I know my setup's not gonna reach out that far. The maximum that I think I can get out of my setup is about 130 yards. Maybe 125. So 140 is plenty for me. I don't run out of tape. You can change the orientation. You can change how you want your numbers to be ranged. the widths of your line, the different fonts, your font size, your line spacing, 1 yard, 2.5 yard, 5 yard increments, or where your hash marks are going to be. Your line weights. The first one I did on light didn't come out good, so medium is what I went with. And then your line colors. You can choose different line colors. This is the setup I have. So you're going to go back to print, pull it up, file, print, and this is pretty important. I don't know why my printer does this, but you want to make sure that you change the scale back to 100 right here. Make sure you're printing it out in 100% scale, not 97%. You're gonna go to print. And this is what it looks like. All right, so now that we have our site tape printed out, we're gonna cut it out of the sheet. I've cut this out. I'm just gonna double check and measure it against the scale that I know my 0 and my 100 yard mark are. So my 0 is at 50 and my 100 comes right on to be 65. So I know this is correct. Because this is the way the wheel goes on the site, I like the numbers to be off to the right, away from the pin. You can choose to do it however you like, but this is my preference. This is what I like to see on my setup wheels. On the ones that come with HHA, the numbers are kind of in the middle. They're a little small. They're harder to see. When I am cutting this out, I'm going to cut out the numbers on the right side or the left side. All right, so here's your custom site tape. Now, how do you get this onto the wheel, Jeff? Well, I'm glad you asked. What I'm using is a Aero wrap. I guess you could use any color, but I have white, so I'm going to use white. If you had kids at home and they have like a glue stick, this would come in perfect for this, but I do not. So I'm just going to use some super glue and just lightly coat. So now I have some super glue on here. Pick it up, and I'm going to stick it onto my Aero wrap. Push it down. Corners are kind of sticking up. That's not a big deal just yet, because I'm going to take my Scotch tape and pull right over the top and push it down. What this is going to do is it is going to keep water from getting in and ruining this paper site tape. So far, since I've been running one of these, I haven't had an issue. Now off of the wrap, but be careful not to cut too close to the paper. I try to leave myself the smallest of gap, probably about, I don't know, a 32nd or 64th of an inch. Here you go. You have your custom site tape. Now you can take it and stick it on your spool, just like you would any other site tape. So peel the wrap away. Take your spool or your sight bar or whatever you have for your individual site. Wrap it nice and tight. Push down firmly. Now what I like to do here is I will take another piece of Scotch tape and just overlay both of these ends and take a razor blade and just cut off this excess little bit of tape. And there you go. You have yourself a custom built site tape that will go to whatever yardage really your heart desires, all the way out to 140 or whatever your given setup will allow you to get to. So I probably should have mentioned, before you pull your site tape or your setup wheel off of your site, you want to make sure that your site is locked down. You have this thing dead sighted in. Roll the wheel back up to 50 yards or the 0 on your site tape. Lock it down so you know it's locked down. You're going to then take your new site tape that you have just built on your new wheel, put it onto the spool, line it up at 50, because that is the site tape we have set for, and this will be your home base position. This will be your 0. So now when your site wheel is set at 50, the pins above that, your 40 pin, your 30 pin, your 20 pin, will all be sighted in. If you want to reach out to 100, 120, 140, whatever your site tape and your setup will allow you to get to, you have it now. If you guys are building your own site tapes, let me know. Hit that like button down below. If you're already building site tapes, that's awesome, because now that I think a lot of us are stretching out a little further, it helps. Like, having a longer site tape helps. Even the ones that come from the manufacturer, sometimes when you're setting these up, you're kind of an in-betweener. You're either too fast for this sight tape or too slow for that one. So building your own can help. Anything out past, I think, 60, 70 yards, having a really accurate sight tape is gonna make all the difference in the world. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please hit that like button, drop a comment down below, and we'll check you out on the next video.